Hey there folks, welcome back to Chits and Cardboard, and you should know there are two things we love in this world. First-time publishers taking epic shots, and Forex games. Today we have a special treat for you at the request of a viewer who said we need to review more Forexes. It is a very ambitious game from first-time publisher Sordane Publishing. It will not fit on your Cadillacs, and that game is Aldarra. So if you haven't heard of Aldarra, I don't blame you, because Aldarra really flew under the radar. It is a 4X game from a brand new publishing house that came at a very high price tag because, frankly, the production is stellar for a first-time publisher. As you saw earlier, the box is massive, but rightfully so, because it holds multiple of these asymmetric player trays, which hold asymmetric miniatures that look different per faction that are some of the most detailed minis we've ever seen. So let's get it out of the way right now. The production quality is stellar. So gameplay-wise, Aldarra takes place over an indeterminate number of rounds. The game ends when someone hits 20 points. Pretty straightforward. Each round consists of 3 phases. There's preparation, where you perform upkeep, replenish these crystals on the map, which are valuable for points later, as well as determine the player order based on who has the least points, which is very good as a comeback mechanic. You then have the expansion phase, which is where you take most of your actions, and we'll get into that later. And then the management phase, where you get to exploit the various regions you've explored and control. You get to buy victory points, buy new units, recruit units to the board, and then refresh for the next round.
Okay, so we're going to start off by talking about the expansion phase because that's where the bulk of this game happens. In turn order, you're going to be placing these order tokens. You're going to be choosing a hex on the board and placing one there, and then moving units either to that location from surrounding areas, or you're going to be fanning out your units from that location to surrounding areas. If you enter a location with an opponent's unit, instantly combat's going to happen, but we're going to talk about that later.
So after you've completed resolving your order token, you have the choice to explore a location you control. It doesn't need to be the location you just explored, it just needs to be any location that you haven't explored yet that is in your control. You do so by taking an exploration token and placing it on a location you control, and then drawing an exploration card. These are really cool and fresh and add a lot of variety to the game, but also come with our first minor complaint, which is they're kind of unbalanced sometimes. Sometimes you get upgrades you already had. Sometimes one player gets one that just seems so much stronger than the rest of them. And I understand that it's supposed to add an element of surprise and eventually it balances out because you get so many of them. But in the moment, there could be some take that feels bad kind of stuff, which you could remove from the pile should you want to.
So after the expansion phase, you're going to go into the management phase. This is where you're going to be exploiting the different tiles around the map, and you're going to be building your different ships. Now, the areas that you're going to be interested in controlling are forests and copper mines. They're going to give you 1 income, silver mines that are going to give you 2 income, gold mines that are going to give you 3 income, and then any of the locations that you control that have a crystal that were set up there during the preparation phase, you're going to win those as well, which are very, very juicy.
So once you've earned your income, it's time to build your units. And again, we'll get into how the units interact with combat later, but it's worth mentioning that every single unit, at least at the start of the game, between different factions is symmetrical. Meaning, my frigate is the same as another faction's frigate, my destroyer is the same as another faction's destroyer. Now, when you're building units, there's 2 considerations. There's light and heavy units. Light units attack earlier in combat, heavy units have to take a salvo of light unit attacks before they get to attack, but tend to have bigger dice and cost more. There's also 2 different types of buildings, outposts and strongholds. Outposts are the first building you will place in a location you control and allow you to build engineers there, which affect other players' buildings. They make them easier to kill and destroy off the map, but that's the only thing you can build at an outpost. Once you've upgraded that outpost to a stronghold, you can build any type of unit you want. In order to build an outpost or upgrade an outpost to a stronghold, you have to have an engineer in the location you're building them. That's how you tend to spread across the map, and you really want to be tactical about where you do that, such that you have a nice advantage as to where your units are spawning when the time comes.
So in addition to building units and buildings, you can spend your resources to buy victory points, either 1 or 3 at a time for either coins or crystals. This is the first way to score victory points and get you closer to the win against your friends. Now the second way is secondary objectives. These are missions that once completed, you'll immediately score 1 or 2 points. This could be like fighting a battle against somebody who has more victory points than you and winning. You can also choose to either draw one new secondary objective or to replace as many secondary objectives that you have in your hand as you want and draw new ones. This can be really important because if you're in a situation where your cards just don't really make sense for you, you can change up your tactics and your strategy, getting you a way better chance to win the game. This is a really cool aspect that's not in a lot of games, and I really like the fact that you can replace these cards and it's not just like draw a new one and discard one. You can get as many as you have in your hand back and just totally change up your game. Also in the management phase, you're going to be drafting discovery cards. Now these are where the asymmetry in this game really unlock, and they did it really well in this game. You're either going to be getting ship upgrades that are really powerful and really change how you can use your different units on the board, or you're going to be getting powerful abilities like artillery that allows you to attack a different location on the map that you're not located in. Really cool. Or powerful tactical and strategic one-time use abilities that can really change up the game state, and if you use them at the right time, it can really get you the win.
Now, although Aldarra is a 4X, it definitely leans into the biggest way to earn victory points in this game, which is combat. Aldarra plays very much so like an area control game, and combat is triggered whenever 2 units of opposing factions occupy the same hex. Anytime combat is triggered, it resolves in optionally 2 phases. First is a light salvo where all the light units attack, or optionally you can save your light salvo to attack with your heavy salvo and have all your units attack at once to take out bigger buildings. Units innately have a type of dice they roll or multiple dice they roll, and an amount of defense they have. Defense doesn't really operate like health, it's more like an all or nothing type of thing. If you don't manage to destroy a ship in one shot, it's not going to be destroyed, it'll heal back to full, let's say. So, during the light salvo, you will roll dice equal to the light units you have in combat, at the same time as your opponent will. Anytime you roll a little asterisk with a number in it, specifically a 1, that is a critical hit, and it allows you to roll an extra dice, and these scale. So if you roll 2 like I just did, you roll a 3rd like I just did, this can get out of hand pretty quickly. Now, the heavier units, the stronger units will roll stronger dice, but the weakest dice have the highest chance of actually rolling a critical. It is a 1 in 3 chance. After hits are assigned, if there are survivors, people have the option to retreat or roll another round of combat. Once there's nobody left in the combat ends, and the ownership of that hex goes to the winner. The winner will gain victory points, and the loser will gain 1 coin per ship they lost as a neat little comeback mechanic. Now, it's worth noting again that all the unit types across all factions at the start of the game are symmetrical, barring any upgrades, and buildings have a unique interaction with combat. Buildings tend to have more defenses, therefore are more difficult to destroy, and they also roll attacks. Also, if you don't destroy all the units, you start adding escalation dice, which makes combat stronger and stronger and stronger until everyone's been exterminated. Now, buildings have interesting interactions sometimes with locations surrounding them. For example, fortresses can attack locations adjacent if they're upgraded. So just keep in mind what upgrades people have going into combat, because they can really sway the tide of battle.
So the base game of Aldarra comes with 4 different factions that are all asymmetric. These asymmetric powers are not that huge, but they can actually be pretty impactful. One example of that is the Yodarian Empire that I have in front of me. They are able to take the discovery card that is left over at the end of the draft phase, and in addition, they can move both their outposts and their strongholds. Now, if you get the Savage Skies expansion as well, you're going to be able to play up to 6 players, and you get 2 additional factions as well as the tiles that are needed to make the board big enough. We haven't played at 6 players. One of the main complaints about this game is that it is a little bit long. So we've played at 4 a number of times, but we haven't played at 6, and we can definitely assume that that game would take a really long time, but it could also be really fun.
So before we get into our final thoughts, let's just give you a quick recap because there's so much going on in Aldarra. First off, Aldarra occurs over an indeterminate number of rounds until someone hits 20 points at the end of a round. Rounds have 3 phases. The preparation phase, where you reset the turn order and put crystals out on the map to be fought over during the expansion phase. The expansion phase occurs where players take 3 turns, 1 turn each in turn order, until they've placed all of their order tokens out on the board, moved ships, started battles, and explored various locations, looking for exploration cards which can turn the tide of the game. The management phase then occurs where players get to mine all the locations they now command and control. They get to build new buildings and ships. They get to take a new secondary objective or replace secondary objectives they have with new ones if they don't like them. And they get to draft discovery cards, which give them new technologies or new upgrades they get to play with for the rest of the game. After that, if someone hits 20 points, the game ends. If not, rinse and repeat. And with that, let's jump into our thoughts. That is Aldarra. The box is too big to put here, so it's up there. But
That's very true.
Aldarra. What a game.
I really enjoyed this. I was very, very pleasantly surprised with this game. The first thing I want to mention is the fact that this is actually a very easy game to teach people.
Totally.
You can get up and running in about 20 minutes. For the most part, everybody really has an idea of how area control games happen. And another aspect that's really cool about this is it's fight, 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 fight. Like there's going to be action. It's going to be fast paced. It's going to be good.
It's one of those games that's supposed to be fun.
Yes.
Not like
100%.
too literal.
Yeah. Yep.
Like I would say if you're going into this expecting like an Eclipse-like or Twilight-like experience,
Definitely
you're
not
not
Twilight.
going to get that.
Yeah,
It's going to be
yeah.
more along the lines of like a Kemet or like some sort of area control game where you're just ramming combat over and over.
Yeah, 100%.
Winning battles, like you can trigger 5 battles and if you win them all in the same turn, you just get a ton of points. There's nothing that you can do to avoid that.
Especially,
it's so strong.
Especially when you factor in secondary objectives, because a
Yeah.
lot of the secondary objectives will get scored after combat from certain conditions.
And that's to say, the game's not perfect, right? It
No,
is definitely
no,
a
definitely
first
not.
published game. I think the game goes on like a little too long.
Yeah.
For what it is.
Yeah.
Like if it was even half an hour shorter at 4, I think it would be perfect.
Yeah.
Because you're not
Yeah.
doing anything super complicated.
Mm-hmm.
And you're doing it over and over and over and kind of like triggering fights here, triggering battles there, doing
Yes.
this thing
Yeah.
here. Also, I will say exploration cards are not all made equal. There's a ruins map tile you can control where if you explore here, you can draw 2, keep 1, but there's only a couple of them. And once
Yes.
they're explored,
Yeah.
they're done.
Yeah.
Also,
Yeah, to say
the
the
secondary objectives, some of them are much easier than others circumstantially
Yeah.
to attain.
Yeah.
Things I really like. The way you fight over crystals and they move around the map,
Yes,
super cool.
100%, 100%.
The way that
Yep.
there's high value areas just dictated by the amount they mine, so people are fighting over gold more than they're
Yep.
fighting over silver.
You're also
Really
fighting
cool.
over the crystal mines
crystal
as well.
mines,
Those
yeah.
are super important. And where they're placed along the board, which you can either take the base setup of the game or you can do a random setup as well. They're
Totally.
super important, really effective.
And I'm one for the random setup. I also
Yeah.
think, look,
Yeah.
again, the production quality, these miniatures are insane.
These things are so
They're
good,
insane.
and every faction has different ships. Like
Yeah.
they all look completely different. So even though that at the beginning of the game, before you've upgraded anything, they all function the same. The models
so
are
good,
amazing,
yeah.
and they're so good.
Now, I also want to say the box is egregiously large. It doesn't fit
Yes,
in the
it's
Cal-X
huge.
shelf. It doesn't
Yeah.
even fit, like,
Yeah.
it's like a double a Cal-X shelf. But the setup just being like, hey, pull
Yeah,
these trays
yeah.
out, put a bunch of hex tiles out, and
Yeah,
you're done.
shuffle your hexes,
is
place them
just
out.
so snappy. Like, it takes
Yep. Mm-hmm,
like 20 minutes to set this game up. And that is the crux of a 4X, in my opinion, a lot of the
Yeah.
time. It's like actually getting the game out, putting it together, and getting the game started tends to take so long. This doesn't have that issue.
100%.
So as much as I'm
Yeah.
complaining, like, hey, the game outstays its welcome a little bit,
Yeah.
you're getting into the game and out of the game so much faster that I think it's worth it. Also, we always disclose whether we got a game for free or not. Sordane Publishing sent us this. Doesn't change our opinion. There are still
100%.
negatives about the game,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
production ain't one of them.
Yeah,
These
no.
metal coins, the various minis, the units, the cards,
crystals,
the
like the crystals are beautiful.
So
Like these things
nice.
are awesome.
I like that the game comes with 4 factions by default. None of them are particularly overwhelming to learn. The expansion factions are a little bit more complicated. You were
Yeah,
playing one
slightly,
that
yeah,
got
yeah.
to jump through forests and stuff. That was
Yeah.
really cool. I do think that the discoveries keep things fresh. I do think the variable setup keeps things interesting. I do think the variable player powers are really cool, and the different
Yep.
combinations of factions is cool.
I like the
think
dice as well. The dice are really good. The fact
Yeah.
that you have different types of dice, they have different success rates, they have different critical rates, they have different damage values. That's
Totally
really
agree.
cool.
Also, I love that the game is so simple. You guys couldn't really see this, but like the faction card has the entire sequence of play right
Everything.
here, and it's
Yeah.
basically everything you need to know outside of
yeah.
combat specifics.
Another complaint that some other people have had with this game is the asymmetry. It's pretty good. It's pretty balanced overall, we both feel. But there are some factions that can at least feel bad depending on the game. Like
Yeah.
the one faction allows you to, rather than taking one of the discovery cards that's available, you can actually go through the deck and choose upgrades specifically for your buildings or your ships. That could feel bad if that person's doing really, really well. But that said, we haven't had the person playing that faction win the game.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah,
feels
take it
bad,
for a grain
but-
of salt. Again, it's an area control game primarily, and they tend to be crabs in a
Yep.
bucket. If someone's winning too hard, people just gang that person up,
Yep.
and that's kind of what balances all this. So, like,
100%.
the game ramps up. Like, I say the game takes a little too long, but the game ramps up and kind of ends earlier than you'd expect as well.
Oh, God, yeah.
Because, like,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
the last
no,
round, people
100%.
are getting a ton of points for one round,
Yep.
but early
Yep.
on, like the first 3 or 4 rounds, you're not going to be trickling points in that
You
fast.
can potentially, like, so the game ends once somebody's hit 20 or more points.
At the end of the round,
and
yeah.
you can score like 9 points in one turn, depending on how you play it out.
Yeah.
Like if you go and you start, like especially one of the expansion faction that I was playing that jumps through forests, I think I started 5 different fights in the same turn, and I won all of them. Plus, I scored a couple of my objective cards in the same turn, and just won the game right there.
Yeah. Now, again, I got to give some credit to Sordane Publishing for a first game. This is
amazing.
just
It's
ridiculous.
So good. It's
so
really,
good.
really, really good.
I know it's really expensive, and
is.
the place I'm
That's a
going to place
downside.
this is I think it's really good. I think if you can try it before you buy it,
100%.
you should.
Yeah.
But I don't think if you're into this kind of game, you'd be disappointed with what you got.
Especially if you want something that fits into like an evening that you're going to play a 4X game and you don't have like an entire day, or you don't want to spend an entire day playing a 4X, right?
Totally. Now,
Right.
if you like to be a bit more deterministic, there's a lot of luck involved here.
Yes.
And this
yes.
game might not be for you.
It's all
It's all dice. It's all
dice.
exploration cards.
It's
all
drawing
specific
discovery
secondary
tokens,
objectives, drafting
like-
discoveries, like everything. I want to reinforce though, the game does a really good job of like, even though you could turtle and build high defense outposts and stuff and like kind of sit on
You wanna
locations,
attack.
you get a lot of points from attacking. So
Yeah.
you really want to be attacking. So like, I'd say this errs more towards Kemet than Voidfall on the scale of 4X.
definitely.
So keep that in mind. But yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
That's
Cool.
it. I'm
Aldarra.
John.
I'm Jeff.
And that's Chits and Cardboard. We'll catch you next time. See
ya.
ya.